My wife is a 3-time suicide survivor. And we were in a marital, and she was in a personal crisis, mental health crisis, and started in October 2020, and basically got triggered by getting pregnant. And she had prepartum in a way, just started having flashbacks of her very traumatic, overwhelming childhood, very abusive mom, stepfather. They overwhelming. She was one of 11 kids. And so like she was in the cycle of taking care of the children, holding the family together, and getting in between mom and dad when they were really violent with each other and all that. And her nervous system never got a sense of safety. So she never got secure attachment at all from either parent. And so when you have that, then her nervous system was really dysregulated. And then when we get in a relationship and get pregnant, then that triggered her childhood trauma. And so as a result, I basically became a Sherlock of the nervous system, of like trying to figure out what the heck is going on here. My wife was good. Now she's not. There's triggers, cause and effect. My daughter would cry and would literally send my wife into a depression spiral if she cried for longer than 20 seconds. I would carry my baby out into the streets crying, to the point of like the neighbors are going to think I'm like a horrible dad because I always have a crying baby in my arms in the streets. Or I'd be like yelling at my wife, get out of the house, get out of the house, get out of the house. If Sonnet, our daughter, was crying and didn't want to go out of the house, or I couldn't get her out of the house in time. Because I just could see her nervous system react. And so at the end of the day, I had to learn I was in peak performance coaching, mostly NLP based, working on the subconscious for leaders, entrepreneurs. But then I didn't really understand the nervous system at that level. And I was in a deeply, like my peak performance stuff, pattern interrupt, NLP stuff was not working, because it was literally, it was an unconscious physiological reaction that my wife would have when my daughter would cry. And so that's when I got into psychedelics. I explored that. It took me 6 months to study. And I was like, okay, there's something going on here. The psychedelics create the opening in the nervous system. I studied it, and then I actually experimented on myself with a guy's trip, did some mushrooms for the first time. And it was like, I didn't lose my mind, which was my biggest fear. Like I was like, I like my mind. It's a good mind. I don't want to lose it. But it was, instead, I got flooded with gratitude. I remember sending my wife a weepy text that after the journey, and I was like, babe, life is so beautiful, blah, 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 I love you, blah, blah. And then she sends me a text back, you did what? Like she was freaking out, like, because she's like all scared of like new stuff at that point. Came back, talked her into doing it, and she was kind of stuck in a depression spiral or a loop of just like everything is suffering. That first night we did it with her brother-in-law and sister, we all laughed for like 2.5 hours. First time she really had laughed in years at that point. And I was like, okay, so this created a radically new opening. Then as I started working with the medicines and helping her, I basically put together the medicines create the opening, but then you still have to do the parts work. Because like she would do the medicine and we would go to ceremonies, but then our daughter would still cry. She was an infant, or, you know, a little girl, a little baby. Of course, she's going to cry. And then I would try and talk my ceremonial leaders into guiding her to work on the triggers, because I understood what was happening. I was like, there's a trigger here. If we work on the part of her that is getting activated while she's on the medicine, while her nervous system feels safe, because medicines almost like balm you with a sense of love and safety, then I think she'll be different. They wouldn't do it, but it just wasn't their training to work on trauma.
They just literally had no idea.
And so no judgment on that. They're like both facilitators of the psychedelic facilitators, the group that they're friends. I collaborate with them now. Like they help me on my retreats now, ironically. But then I talked to a therapist into doing a session, and I talked my wife into doing a guided session, a 5-hour session. That was February 2023. Literally the day before, our daughter cried for like 30 seconds. I couldn't get my wife out of the house in time, couldn't get my daughter out. My wife was trying to soothe my daughter. What happened? My wife cries on the basement steps for an hour, in the bathtub, cries for another 2.5 hours, says it's hopeless, let's give up, cancel the appointment. That was on a Tuesday night, end of February 2023. I said, no, we're not canceling. I just held my ground. I'm like, it's worth a shot. I think it will work. Wednesday night, 5-hour session. I get home at 10:30. I was like, oh, my wife's different. I drop my daughter off at my mom's. Then Thursday, I pick up my daughter and bring her home. And a couple hours later, we're up in our bedroom, and our daughter, who's about 20 months old at the time, toddler temper tantrum meltdown, 8, 9, 10 minutes long. She's just screaming and flailing her arms on the ground, and you can't do anything to soothe the toddler when they're having temper tantrum meltdown.
I get it.
You just got to ride it out. 2 days before, our toddler had cried for 20 seconds, and it sent my wife into a 4-hour depression spell, right? That was literally lasted until the next day, where it was a depression hangover. That time, Thursday, after the temper tantrum meltdown, she sits there on the bed and laughs and realizes our daughter is okay. She's just being ridiculous. And I was like, oh, she's never laughed and been so calm when my daughter has screamed. And I was like, okay, let's see if this sticks. Sure enough, it stuck. We're knocking on 2 years and almost 3 months now. And I would say that Wednesday night with her session, guided session like I do now, that was the day she got cured of depression. And I would say 98% cured of her complex PTSD. Now, the other stuff led to that. Like we did NAD optimization and other trauma work and nervous system work, but that was the clincher.
That was the opening.
Yeah, that was a massive.
There's so much there. Thank you for sharing that, because it's literally the fuel of love.
Yeah.
It's not just pain that fuels you. It's love for your wife and for Sonnet.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful, man. I feel like the greatest gift we could ever give to ourselves and our children is a life that's free from our stuff, free from our pain, free from our projections. So it's easy to hear that, but to be it and embody it is so difficult and so different than traditional psychology. It's funny. We have so many episodes on this podcast where we've gone into ceremony talk. And the one thing, and I'm curious how you feel about this, the one thing that I see across the board is that these ceremonial practitioners or these ayahuasqueros or whatever you want to call them, they just give people the medicine and then they say, have your experience. There's no guidance. There's no structure. There's no psychic surgery. There's no framework that you use, which is IFS, peak performance, optimization of the body, understanding psychology. How did you even, beyond just your experience with your wife, how did you see the white space, the open healing space that's needed in the ceremonial space? Did you see that very clear before you even began your journey?
I wouldn't say before, but in the midst of it, like when I was hunting for solutions for my wife, I saw that the medicine gave an opening. So it's like the medicine, and if you look at the neuroscience, you have two major critical periods when you take a psychedelic, whether it's ketamine, psilocybin, MDMA, LSD, whatever. In that window, the first window is the acute subjective experience. And this is from a research report, August 2023, Nardo et al. And the acute subjective experience, for example, psilocybin, MDMA, which I primarily use, you have a 3 to 6 hour window, basically where your nervous system is more wide open than any known point in your life.
When you say wide open, what do you mean by that?
Meaning it's like I have back-end access to your programming. If you think of the human operating system as like a computer operating system, I've got back-end access to Josh. With your permission, with your support, with your insight, where we work together on turn on and off switches, right? Like when we did our session, working on the parts that are activated, almost like you got this program over here. When this happens, when Carrie says this part of Josh comes out, boom. And he attacks and he gets defensive, or this happens, or when this happens in business, then Josh comes out in this way. Well, we got back end access. Now in that, but I'm going in, I'm looking at patterns before I do the session, but I'm looking at patterns and almost like I consider myself a neurosurgeon of the subconscious mind. I'm going to hunt.
That's so good.
For the cancer, for the problems, for the kinks in the programming, for the bugs, right? Because my clients are like you. They're high impact individuals. They want to make a big difference. They are driven, and they have if they don't get themselves right, they might have ripple effect of thousands of people, right? So we don't have time. We don't have 2 years to sort through stuff. Like my clients are like, Mike, I don't have time to unravel. Like I need to be back on my game on Monday. It's Saturday. I need to be back on my game in 2 days. Okay. So I have to like, open them up, clean out the gunk, put them back together, prime them for Monday. and Tuesday and Wednesday and the rest of the month, really. So the medicines create the opening. Acute subjective experience is the first window. That's the biggest window of our life, because also we have, if you think you and I, you're about to turn 45. I'm 45 right now. Our prefrontal cortex, everything's developed. When my daughter, who's almost 4, you have young kids as well. So when we, until like age 7, our prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed. But at this age, it is.
Yeah.
So, but we don't get the neuroplasticity at this age that our children are getting at age 3 and 4. So we just basically biopted or went back in time, gave us the neuroplasticity. You can make rapid changes in the human operating system. And the next window is the critical period reopening, which is 2.5 weeks for MDMA and psilocybin, where your neuroplasticity is pretty close to what your children are under age 7, where they're flexible, they're adaptable, and it's gentle, but it's still a lot of patterns can be changed, which you guys, for example, in your window, you guys did it really well overall. Sure. Not everything's perfect, probably, but you made so much progress.
If you love that video, you'll love the one on the screen right now. Click the one on the screen and enjoy.